Well, hello and welcome to The Resource, the podcast propelling employer brands to recruit smarter and retain better. I'm your host, Priscilla Peters.
And I'm your other host, Scott Dismuke. And Priscilla, we got to spend a little time together recently, actually
I
face to face,
know.
not, via computer screen.
Face to face, I will tell you, Scott and his beautiful wife invited me to dinner, and you even bought my dinner, Scott. That was so nice. So I owe you one. But listen, I have not stopped thinking about that spot where we ate in Franklin, Tennessee since we ate there. Now I can't remember the name of it. I know it starts with a C. Best Italian food I've ever had by far.
Colacinos in
Colacinos.
downtown Franklin. You got to have a reservation. It's kind of a small little quaint Italian restaurant. It is all the pasta's handmade. It's fantastic. It's great food. So
Oh man,
maybe we should
it
get them to be
was.
a sponsor of the podcast because
Maybe we should.
we're giving them a massive plug here. But if you're in downtown Franklin, get reservations for Colacinos, some of the best Italian food I think in Nashville.
It was the best Italian meal I've had. And previous to that, I had an excellent Italian meal in Boston in Little Italy. But what I had the other night was that. I keep talking about it. My husband's like, enough. Okay, I'll take you back to Franklin. It'll be fun. I'm just like, it was excellent. And the company was nice too.
Well,
So
yeah,
it was
of
good.
course. What's one thing we're known for here in Nashville, Tennessee is our robust Italian food.
Right. Right. Exactly. Well, listen, we've had like quite the cycle here of different topics that we've covered on the podcast. We had Chris Spear. We got great feedback. Boy, he is very passionate. I enjoyed that conversation that we had with him. That was great. If you didn't get a chance to listen to that, go and listen to that. The leader of ATA and some thoughts that he had on just everything that's going on. I thought that was really good. Today, we're going to dive into some more data and interesting things that have come out of our driver survey. We'll get to that here in just a second. But we put a poll on LinkedIn, Scott, and I thought this was interesting. So we posted a poll on LinkedIn, and it was asking our audience, just really trying to get a feel for like, how close are you to capacity? How close are you when it comes to driver needs? The exact question was, how close to driver need capacity are you right now? And so 53% said that they are 90 to 100% full. So they're almost full or full, over a little over half. 35% are 75 to 89% full. And then 12% said that they were 50 to 74% full. My gut tells me that might change as we're kind of getting into, I know you guys are starting to have lots of conversations of folks and their turnover starting to creep up. So what are your thoughts on that LinkedIn information?
Well, I mean, and I think we've talked about this on our last couple of episodes. I think the word still in the industry is uncertainty. We had the tariff announcement the 1st of April, then particularly as it relates to China, which we know is big when it comes to transportation and logistics. Now we've got the 90-day pause on that. There's still some uncertainty about what happens after the 90 days. I don't think that those tariffs will go back up in 90 days. I don't have any crystal ball. Politically, I think that both China and the United States don't want that to happen. We don't need the trade war escalated. So I just think politically, this 90-day pause kind of created an off-ramp for both countries. So part of me just doesn't think that those tariffs will go back into effect. I don't know what they're going to end up. So I still think that there's some uncertainty out there, but I will just, we're already seeing it. We're going to talk about a lot of this data today in the driver survey. It doesn't surprise me that, more than half of these folks are saying they're almost to capacity or at capacity. But I think the data tells us, we're hearing it, we're seeing it, that we're going to have some, if it hasn't already started, we're going to have some pretty significant driver churn as the economy improves. And I know we've been saying that for 6 months now, but I think we're starting to see it. We're starting to hear it. And I think the numbers that we're going to go over here in a little bit tell us that same story. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree, and we're even starting to see folks start to really pick up some of their recruitment marketing efforts, whether they currently today have additional needs or they know they're kind of coming down the pike. And some folks, like you said, are starting to see turnover creep up a little bit. One of the things that we're hearing a lot of, which is interesting because we shared this in our last episode when we recorded our data rundown webinar, but I've heard it from I think 3 different carriers in the past 2 weeks is they've got guys leaving the building because they're taking local jobs or jobs that they don't necessarily typically compete with, but because the pay is so competitive, not necessarily are they getting paid more, they might be getting paid a little less, but they're home every night. And that has been something, and we saw a lot of that, on the backside of COVID. A lot of those local jobs were local driving jobs were taking some of the drivers that traditional, regional, or over the road carriers had. And so we're starting to see that again. So that's going to get a little dicey, I think, too, when it comes to recruiting and retention. So just a lot of stuff going on, just a lot.
Yeah, well, I think let's kind of dive into this as Priscilla mentioned. For this episode, we have a lot of must know data and resources that we're going to unpack from our spring driver survey. Most of you know that if you've listened to this in the past, we do 2 surveys a year. We do one in the spring and one in the fall. And it's always kind of interesting to go through that and kind of see firsthand what some of the opinions are from our professional drivers. But before we do that, let's hit our final mile first 5, sponsored by driver.jobs, your destination for hiring the drivers you need for your final mile operations. Driver.jobs, matching the right drivers with the right opportunities for every last mile. So typically we do our first 5 right now. And we go through kind of our first 5 questions with our guests. Since we don't have a guest today, we're going to kind of ask a question here. And I'll be honest with you, I have no idea I guess I'm old because I have no idea what this is about.
Yeah.
But there's evidently some kind of online debate that has been evidently pretty intense. But it's an important question of who would win a fight, 100 men versus 1 gorilla. And like this, I read this and I was like, I don't know where this online debate is happening. It's clearly not where I hang out online. So I don't even know what to say about this. So
Well, yeah.
go.
So I saw it on our podcast outline. So I reached out to Sydney, our podcast producer, and said, "Hey, what is this? What is going on?" Well, apparently we are out of the loop, Scott, because the internet has been brewing over this debate. I'm not really sure why it's a debate. I would think 100 men would take down 1 gorilla. Now, again, I have not been privy to you know, both sides of the equation, but wouldn't you think 100 men could take a gorilla? I would think 3 men could.
I mean, gorilla's pretty strong. I
A
mean,
100 men? That's a
well,
lot of people.
yeah, but yes, it is a lot of people. But I would think that 1 gorilla swipe could take out a few of those guys. I don't. I literally I have no idea what. I mean, this is
Yeah.
I don't even
We're
know what to
basically
say.
showing our age because we have no idea what's going on the internet, but
Yeah,
everyone else does.
I don't know where this I don't know where this debate has taken place. It's but yeah, I saw this question. I was like, I don't even have anything. I don't even have anything clever to say because this just baffles me.
But wait, so you're saying you think the gorilla would win? Because I disagree. I'm just going on record.
Yeah, I have no idea. I honestly don't know. I mean, this is
We have stumped Scott with our first 5, our one first 5, just one of the first 5. Well, we'll have to see. Well, hey, if you're listeners, viewers, y'all chime in. Let us know. Shoot us an email, comment. Let us know what y'all think. I'm going 100 men. And apparently Scott thinks a gorilla could take 100 men.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna go with gorilla because I like listen, if I was one of the 100, I wouldn't wanna deal with a gorilla.
No, I would not either. I wouldn't either. However, I don't know. I just think that could easily.
I would want listen, if I was one of the 100, I would wanna be somebody that was at the back of that pack. I wouldn't
Mhm.
wanna be one
For
of the
sure.
initial, one of the initial people to make contact with. I don't know, I don't wanna mess with an angry gorilla for sure.
No.
So, I don't
No.
know.
Maybe there's video evidence one way or the other. We'll check with Cindy, but y'all let us know what
Oh,
you think.
yeah, please do.
Okay.
That's obviously extremely important that we know who would win this fight. Jeez.
Very important. Very important. Okay. All right. So we're going to dive into our spring driver survey results. We're not going to go through the whole thing. We'll put a link to the show notes if you want to download the spring driver survey and you can kind of share it with your team and get some insights from that. So let me start. So the first question we always ask, like, what's your age? That's the first question that we ask. But after that, we always ask the question, are you currently looking for a job? And remember, these are drivers. So are you currently looking for a truck driving job is the question. And Scott, this was something because since we've been doing the survey, which what is about 3 years, 4 years, 3 years, I think, this is the highest that the yes has been. So 46.8% of the drivers said, yes, I'm looking for a job, while the other 53% said no. So what are your thoughts on that, Scott?
Well, it's a 7%, almost 7% increase from where it was in the fall. So I think we usually conduct the fall survey kind of mid-September to mid-October. We conducted this survey mid-March to kind of mid-April. One of the things, and we're having this conversation with drivers a lot, particularly over the last couple of years, is as drivers are kind of complaining about pay or complaining about miles or lack thereof, is hey, the grass isn't greener on the other side. This is an industry wide issue. This is not a carrier specific issue. I've kind of felt this for a while that drivers are kind of tired of hearing that. And I think to some degree their patience has worn thin of hearing that. And so I just think that, and we see this in some of the other data that we'll go over. I just think that drivers have become somewhat restless in kind of waiting for this. We know that they look for predictable pay, and I think this is a result of that. And this number is why I am frankly very concerned that as the economy turns and carriers become more active in their recruiting efforts, that we are going to see a lot of churn, because I do think that drivers have somewhat sat back the last couple of years because of what the economy has been like, that we're going to see. And turnover normally goes up in good economic times anyways because the competition goes up. And so I just think that this is an indication of where things are headed. I am extremely fascinated about where this number is going to be in the fall, particularly if the economy does turn around. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think what's even more interesting is we asked the follow-up questions. If you answered yes, why are you looking? If you answered no, why are you not looking? And the other interesting thing that showed up is for those that said, yes, I'm looking for a job, when we ask why, the top reason was improved home time. And before it had been predictable pay.
I think it's
And
always been
so
predictable pay up until this
always.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about heard these rumblings of carriers saying, oh my goodness, we're losing drivers to these local jobs that can get them home every night. And, and I think that carriers are going to have to continue to look at how am I operating? What am I offering? What are home time options? That I have. But I think, that was really interesting to me. And then when we asked them, if you answered no, why are you not looking? I mean, to be honest, over 63% of them said, you know what, I'm happy where I am today. Like I'm good. I'm happy. I'm good. Now, a little over 16% said I am waiting for the economy to improve. And then about almost 7% said I need more experience. So there's like that 20-ish percent that still could go the other way. Um, and we all know drivers who say they're happy today, you never know what could happen tomorrow. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of interesting data just here in these first couple of questions of, are you looking for a job? If not, why? But home time needs to be something. If you're leading recruiting and retention at your carrier, you need to really, I know that everybody's kind of always been focused on pay lately, but I think everybody's going to have to really look at their home time and what they're offering.
Well, and I think a result of that, and we're kind of seeing this, is, if there's not consistent freight out there, the least I can do is be at home and not just, sitting waiting for a load, or, not having the ability to log consistent miles. So kind of those top issues, and Priscilla alluded to this on why drivers are looking. She said the improved home time. The second issue was predictable pay. The third issue was consistent miles. And then the fourth, which was a tie between better benefits and better/newer equipment. So, that's the newer equipment. That's one that has kind of spiked a little bit. I think that makes a lot of sense, because I know that a lot of companies right now, as they're cutting costs, they're not upgrading their equipment. We see that in our data. We see equipment issues that are on the rise. So better new equipment, again, goes back to, and we say this all the time, equipment issues almost always cascade into a home time issue or a compensation issue. So the fact that this is on here does not surprise me at all.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
let's play on this compensation issue and why I think that's adding to this number. Obviously, home time is important, but the compensation. So one of the questions that we asked is, how many pay raises have you received in the last 2 years? 26% of the drivers, almost 27% of the drivers said one. 16% of the drivers said two, 4% of the drivers said three, and 1.9% of the drivers said four. But 50% of them, almost 51% of them, said none. So over half of the drivers that have not received a pay raise in the last 2 years. So what are I've got some feelings on this that kind of piggybacks off of the first question, but does this surprise you? Because it didn't really me. Does this surprise you?
No, this does not surprise me. I think that one of the things that carriers are really going to need to be doing in the next, I would say, 3 to 4 months is doing a real good audit on what you're competing against when it comes to pay, because that's one of the biggest things that we're seeing. So, especially in some of these areas, that these like harder, what we would call like tough areas, really hard to hire areas, a lot of times we'll see, they're getting leads, they're starting to work the leads, and for whatever reason, they're not converting into hires. And a lot of times, what ends up happening is we'll pull some fleet intel data and we'll go, wait a minute, you're not hiring them because you're not competing when it comes to pay. You are not competing well at all. And so I think, and even some carriers are looking at it from, a lot of carriers have this blanket pay that they do. They're even looking at, are there pockets of the country where I'm going to have to pay a driver differently to be able to compete? The answer is probably yes. So I think it's a good time to like do an audit and just see where you stack up, because that does not surprise me. And to be honest, like, my mind also goes to the recruiters and the recruiting teams. Have they had a raise in the past 2 years? That's something else to think about. I know that's like completely different than driver, and we're talking about driver survey, but it's like, listen, we all know that everybody's kind of buckled down, tightened up, but what's going on? Because as this comes back, you're going to need your good recruiters. You're going to want to keep your good drivers. So just overall, a good time to do an audit of what your payroll costs are, and what your pay looks like specifically for drivers.
Obviously, we know that as the economy improves, as the freight economy improves, it's very typical that carriers begin to raise pay. So I think if you look at the first question that we ask of are you looking and what that number is, and you look at kind of what drivers have gotten from a pay raise standpoint in the last couple of years, it did not surprise me that this number was as high as it was. But I think that as things improve, and I still am of the belief that as the economy improves, it's I don't think it's just immediately going to take off. I think it's going to take off in spots. And I think that some carriers are going to experience the surge before other carriers do. So, what I foresee potentially happening here is that as carriers start to see an improvement in freight, they start to see an improvement of rates, somebody is going to, multiple somebodies probably are going to raise pay. So when you already know that almost half the drivers are telling us they're looking, half the drivers are saying they haven't gotten a pay raise in 2 years. I think again, that's why I think we're entering the potential of a perfect storm from a turnover standpoint, just because of how extended that this freight recession has been, and how everybody, even to your point, recruiters and others, are looking for better pay. And so I just believe that it's coming, and I think these numbers back it up.
Yeah, and I wonder, we have like a benchmarking group of clients, and they were kind of asking each other on a call that we recently had, like, who anybody thinking about raising pay right now yet? Like, people are starting to just, put some feelers out, like, are wondering if we're going to get back into this whole mode of basically who can keep up with. And I mean, the fact that it's been over 2 years, it could get very interesting. I'll just say that. I'll
Yeah,
just say that. Okay, so the next question that we just kind of wanted to look at today from the driver survey, and this is kind of in my wheelhouse, if you will, in our little wheelhouse over here at Conversion, but we asked the driver, how frequently do you receive calls, emails, or messages from other carriers about potential driving jobs each week? So how many times are you, contacted in some way via phone call, email, message, maybe a messenger on Facebook, some way about other carriers about truck driving jobs? Now, this did not surprise me, but I will say it was a little bit higher than I thought it might be. So 91% of the drivers said at least once or more, like they're being contacted by other carriers. Now, let's see, 46% said 1 to 2 times a week, 24% said 3 to 4, and then 20%, a little over 20%, said 5 or more times a week. So I just want, like, I think it's interesting to think about this in context. So if we think about our jobs, our day jobs, right? Like, we're not contacted very much. Maybe you are, Scott, because you're so
I'm not.
highly
Yeah,
sought after.
I I
But
appreciate
think
your
about,
confidence, but no, I am not.
but think about just from a professional, you know, desk job, if you will, that we have in the corporate world. This doesn't happen. I mean, if we ask ourselves this, it would be, we would ask how many times a year, probably not how many times a week. But you have to really understand and get your head around the fact that 91% of your fleet, 91% of your drivers are being contacted by another carrier every single week. Like, this is not like, oh, they might hear from other carriers from time to time, or they're going to see an ad on social media. No, this is, they are being contacted probably by name because their name's in some database that somebody has, and they're being contacted, whether it be on an app or whether it be, all the places, right? So my big takeaway from this, and I know I could get on the soapbox and you've heard me talk about this before, but as much investment that you make into your recruitment advertising, your recruitment efforts, you have to still recruit your current fleet. You cannot not invest in that side of the house. Otherwise, they're just going to continue to go out the door. So I don't know what you thought about this, Scott.
My take on this is obviously this is a retention issue as much as it is a recruiting issue. And I've had several people over the last several years asked me, if you had to pinpoint one thing, like what's the most important thing for a retention program, I always come back to proactive communication with drivers. So here's what this number tells me. If you're not communicating with your drivers, somebody else is. Now, it's a recruitment message from that other, but right now, when you look at freight recession, which I know we're all tired of talking about it, but when you look at the freight recession, one of the things that we've seen and what we see in this data is drivers are looking for consistent miles, or looking for that predictable paycheck. So if they're looking for consistent miles, that means at some point during each day, definitely each week, they are sitting there waiting. They're waiting for a load. They're waiting for a driver manager to talk to them. They're waiting for somebody to talk to them. And if it's not you, it's definitely another carrier who's promising them something. We're all promising something. And so the retention side of this to me is if you are not proactively talking to your drivers, and I'm not talking about proactively like you have to tell them, hey, we've got this load for you. I'm just talking about proactive reaching out to them and just saying, how are you doing today? Because you'll get a lot of information from a driver from that one simple question. That's the kind of proactive I'm talking about. Is it doesn't have to be the driver manager. It's great if it's the driver manager because that's who ultimately that relationship, and one of the most important that driver has is with their driver manager. But somebody from your organization or somebody that you want contacting your drivers on behalf of your organization has to be proactively reaching out to those drivers. Somebody else is. If you're not doing it, you're missing the boat, and somebody's going to take them away from you. That's my take.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree. And I mean, I think an important thing to think about is, are you giving them a reason to learn more, to click, to respond? Like think about, or are you giving them reasons to not? So it's interesting. I mean, I feel like that we ask that like from time to time, we ask that question. I feel like it's kind of getting higher there. So,
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. So next question here is kind of along the same lines, and I don't think the results here will surprise anybody. But we ask, what's one change the carrier you are currently working for could make that would increase your job happiness? And there was a lot of different answers on this. If you look on here, it's quite long. For those of you that are listening and not watching, we rank them, or we don't rank them, but we put them with, numbers next or letters next to it from the alphabet. It goes from A to U. And so if that gives you an idea of how many responses here. But the top one at 40% obviously was increased pay rate. Doesn't surprise me, particularly when you look at 50% of the drivers hadn't gotten a pay raise in 2 years. That doesn't surprise me. But let me just kind of give you the top five here, Priscilla, and you can kind of take it and run with it. So increased pay rate was 40.6%. Better communication was 9.2%. Improved home time was 8.9%. More consistent miles is 8.5%, and better truck/equipment is 7.2%. So if you go back to why are you looking, there's a lot of commonality between why are you looking and what's one thing that your current carrier could do that would improve your job happiness. I think a lot of those line up. What say you?
yeah, no, I mean, what kind of stood out to me on this one is that number two was better communication. Like even the drivers are acknowledging that before even home time on this one, which to me was like, whoa, okay. And which kind of goes back to your overall advice of proactive communication. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think we've been doing a lot of looking at like personas of drivers and why they respond to certain things the way they do. But one of the things that's really coming out from some of that research that we've done is that drivers really value you just being authentic and honest. Like if you're not the highest paying job, just say, listen, we don't pay the best, but let me tell you what we do better. Or let me tell you, where we do stand out. Like, here's how we communicate. Here's what our home time that we offer. Here's some things to think about from a equipment standpoint. I mean, I think just like making sure what you're selling is matching what you're actually delivering is so important. It's not, I mean, increasing your pay doesn't cure all. If that was the fact, everybody would throw money at it and so I think it is, these numbers can be a little deceiving from that way. It's like, oh, well, we just need to increase pay. No, 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 you got to get better at how you communicate it. You got to get better at does respect really mean for the driver? I mean, I think there's a lot of different things to take away from this one, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Relationships and communication kind of go hand in hand, and there's a great book out about the importance of employee feedback. I'll find the name and author of the book. We'll put it in the show notes because it's a really great book. But one of the things that it says in that book is the better relationship you have with your employees, the harder you make it for them to leave. If those personal relationships exist, then that driver is going to think twice about going somewhere where they don't have a personal relationship, whether that's with the fleet manager, whether that's with a director or vice president of ops. If that relationship exists, the harder it is for them to leave. And I bet if we survey drivers who have stayed with carriers for 10 plus years, they're going to point to individual relationships within that organization as much as anything. And so I think a lot of this that we're going through right now as an industry, again, it goes back to communication, it goes back to relationships, and it goes back to respect. And one thing that we have constantly seen in our feedback data that we get from drivers that we're talking to every day is drivers look at communication and they look at respect as one and the same. And to your point, it's not just asking them how they're doing. It's not just checking in on them. It's not just about remembering birthdays and anniversaries and kids events and things like that. All of that is super important, but it's also being honest and telling them the good, the bad, and the ugly. Drivers appreciate that. They may not like it, but they will appreciate it. And that's kind of my soapbox on this one.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, so we have one more before we kind of wrap up here that we wanted to look at. And this one kind of shifting gears a little bit, but this has come up as just a topic. Drivers are kind of starting to chatter about it a little bit. But we asked them, do you have any concerns about how your personal data is handled in the driver recruitment process? So obviously there's a lot of data that's, transferred that they have to give a carrier, obviously, to be able to be recruited. But we just asked them, like, do you have concerns about that? What is your discomfort? I mean, the fact that they said like 90 something percent of them said they're being contacted every week tells me that their data is in a lot of different places, right? And so what was interesting here is that about 52% of them showed some level of discomfort. Either they're concerned, or they're concerned about how long the data is being stored, or they're concerned with it being shared without their consent, those types of things. So I think the real takeaway here for carriers is to just remember, think about how you have everything set up and how you're using the driver's information that you're getting in the recruiting process. So think about, do I have opt-in language? Has the driver actually opted in to be communicated by me to them? Those types of things. And just really understanding that drivers are more tech savvy than we give them credit for. I say this all the time. We do not give drivers enough credit. And carriers need to really look at, how do I prioritize the driver's privacy? Am I, on different platforms where their data and privacy policies are different than what my organization holds? So those are all questions you should ask when you're dealing with vendors, when you're dealing with, different media sources and outlets. But those kinds of things are really important to ask. But I think at the end of the day, about half of the drivers are saying, yeah, I have some level of concern here when it comes to my data.
Yeah, I don't really have anything more to add to that. I think you hit it all. Obviously, we store a lot of data at PDA with our partners that we work with, and everything is very, very well protected for that reason. And I think, obviously, I think all of us to some degree. I mean, I don't make a practice of this, but if you go out and Google your name, you'll find out how much your information is out there. And I wouldn't be a fan of it, so I can't imagine why drivers would be either. So, Priscilla, I think what you said is 100% spot on.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, that was kind of just the overview that we wanted to do on some of the questions from the driver survey. Again, we'll put a link in the show notes where you can go. There's more questions. We asked a few other questions for this spring survey, but lots of interesting stuff here. So we'll kind of see how it all plays out. Hopefully, you can go and download that, get a copy of that, and share it with your team. But thanks for listening to the resource today. If you had good time, if you got some good information, please give us a virtual high five by leaving a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. And be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button so you never miss an episode.
And when you see our content out there on Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever we're posting it, share it. Let everybody know about the Resource Podcast, and invite your friends to subscribe and follow, and come back to hear all of Priscilla's wisdom that she gives us every single month. But in the meantime, if you have questions or feedback, you can reach out to us on social media, or you can drop us an email. All of those details will be in the show notes, and we will be back next time with more data, insights, and a little bit of fun to help you ace your recruiting and retention game. We hope you have a wonderful day. Be safe out there, and we'll see you next month.